what do you find yourself doing when time goes the fastest? The second thing is, what would you do even if you weren't getting paid to do it? And then the third question, what do you get praise for from other people that is unsolicited?
Welcome to episode 21, Man of Mastery podcast. Today we have Patrick Antonucci of the Dad Hackers podcast. Just a reminder, all of your links and show notes for this episode will be at manofmastery.com/021, manofmastery.com/021. Okay, before we jump into today's episode and lessons learned with Patrick of Dad Hackers, a quick shout out on a Apple podcast review. Irfan writes, ton of value. What an amazing podcast. Ton of value for anyone who seeks to be an elite performer in relationships, parenthood, business, simply better version of themselves. Stories are relevant, applicable, guests are excellent, and a lot to learn. Michael's found an amazing way to give back to the community through his personal growth and his network, and I want to say thank you. I simply can't wait for the next episode of this amazing podcast. It's really hard to say which episode is better than another, but my favorite so far is The Billionaire Butler. Well, hey, thank you, Irfan. Appreciate you taking the time to write that and for the feedback. And I think it's awesome to see that different people have different favorite episodes and topics. So I'll try to keep the variety and quality and interesting stuff coming. And hopefully today is no exception with Patrick from Dad Hackers. He's on a mission to help Christian dads be the best version of themselves and the best fathers they can. So this one's a really cool exchange back and forth of sort of my topics and his topics, and we've got some great intersection overlap, and I think some really nice complementary suggestions and information for each other. The two biggest ones I took away from Patrick in this episode were about a multi-generational responsibility and perspective on family and parenting that Patrick will explain, and it's really worth some thought. The second one is around heart-based parenting. Patrick shares what that's about and some really powerful questions he uses with his kids to help them take responsibility, interdict when they go off the rails emotionally, and to make them responsible, introspective little adults in thinking about their behavior and their own self-development. All right, with that, let's jump in with Patrick of Dad Hackers.
All right, Michael. Thank you for joining me today. How are you doing, brother?
Doing great, Patrick. Thanks for having me. Good talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? You can introduce yourself and what you have going on, and then maybe I'll go after that, and we can kind of take the conversation from there.
Yeah, sounds great. I think we're going to talk about both of our podcasts. Mine is called Man of Mastery, which is around the life journey towards mastery, which is an ongoing, never-ending journey. And something that I've been on here for at least the last 4 years explicitly, probably my whole life in some sense. I've been in about a 25-year career now as a consultant, which a consultant is really a student and a teacher. You're continually learning, applying, transitioning knowledge, moving on to the next. And it's all about making clients successful. My whole life, I've also been involved in athletics. Grew up playing soccer, snowboarding, tennis, running, mountain biking, very, very active. And then a couple big things happened along the way. Around my 30th birthday, I had a super debilitating lumbar back injury. I blew out 2 discs completely, and it led to some intense months of pain and then surgical resolution. And for anybody who's been through that, just you wouldn't wish it on anybody, right? And surgery is an improvement, but far from a fix. So I had to retool everything and sort of went looking for what was going to work for me and my lifestyle personally and professionally. And then, again, the years kind of stack up, and now I'm getting into the mid to late 40s. And a few years ago, I was working on another startup venture, and I kind of thought, everything's humming along here. And one day I stepped on the scale and I'm like, is this thing broken? What is going on? and I just kind of realized the traditional, hit the gym, hit the weights, eat some protein and stay away from bad carbs. It just wasn't working for me. So I went out looking for what was going to work for my physical age, my back issues, something physically that would get me back on top of my game. And I've completely retooled that. But along with it, what I really discovered here in the last 4 years or so was not just about the physical journey. It's a much more rounded pursuit. And that's the concept of what I'm doing through this mastery discovery is, in addition to the physical, things like mental toughness that prepare us for life's challenges and crucible events and things that sneak up on us as fathers and families, emotional control that show up in work and life and road rage, right? And things like that. And some of the softer skills like intuition and applying those fruitfully in life. So it's really all about exploring that little increment between mediocrity and elite level life performance in all aspects of life and work and family.
Cool, man. That's great. You made me think about a whole lot of things personally that I can identify with in your whole kind of bio there. As for me, Patrick Antonucci, I run a podcast and community for Christian fathers called Dad Hackers. And I grew up, my parents divorced when I was 5. I still had a fairly good relationship with my father. I lived with my mother, but went with my dad just about every weekend. And we did the hunting and fishing thing. And, fast forward a couple decades and got married. Been married for about 15 years now. I have 5 of my own children. That's all the children we have. My wife doesn't have any other children. And, I wanted to do the family thing right, coming from kind of a broken home situation, a divorce, and a lot of divorce runs through both sides of my family and dysfunction here and there. And we like to say we put the fun in dysfunctional. But, I really wanted to quote, do it right and honor God and glorify him with my family. I always had this heart for family. I can remember growing up, even in high school, praying to God to send me a wife because I really wanted to have a good, solid, strong family and a good home of my own when I grew up. And now I have those things, and I have a wife, I have children, like I mentioned. And what I'm finding is I have no context for how to do it right because I didn't grow up in the right situation, if that makes sense. And so I wanted to do something about it because a lot of people can whine and groan and lament their position in life and not take action. So about 1.5 years ago, I started the Facebook group for Dad Hackers, just started inviting my friends. And from there, they started inviting other people. And now we have a very decent sized Facebook group. And then a little over 1 year ago, I was trying to think what's the best way, the most effective and efficient use of my limited amount of time that I have to do this Dad Hackers thing. And so I was researching social media, YouTube, podcasting, this and that. And I landed on podcasting as the most effective and efficient use of my time. So I started the podcast, launched that, and that's been humming along for a little over 1 year now. And, my goal was to surround myself with other men who were on the same journey as I was, bring as many men with me and equip and encourage dads to become the men that God has created and called them to be. And I think, Michael, what you're doing and what I'm doing align a lot because we both have this heart for men and we want to see men succeed. We want to see men thrive. We want to see men fulfill their potential and their calling in life. And so I appreciate having the opportunity to have this conversation with you today. And you mentioned something about mastering different areas of life, and you mentioned road rage, and it just made me think. Recently, I've been doing a lot of studying. I took a course on parent coaching from a biblical perspective, and the approach that they took there is a more heart-based approach. And it led me to this conclusion that a lot of adults grow up without with their heart not in the right place, and then they have a lot of difficulty in life that follows from that. They don't have the skill set to control themselves, control their anger, control their thoughts, control their mouths, control their passions, and different things like that. And when you don't learn those adult skills early on in life, they become adult problems that can create large messes and not just little messes like when you're a kid, if that makes sense. But I just wanted to say that because when you were talking about it, it made me think about that. But
Yeah, nice. No, thanks. I mean, and thanks for the background. It's a beautiful message and story that you're getting out there. And I think there is a great intersection between what you're exploring and what I'm exploring. Yeah, I mentioned my consulting career because when I look back, I think naturally I have a passion for and a potential and a skill set and a desire to learn and then share. And to me, that's exactly what you described. This podcast and the other forums are a way to, we're all somewhere on a journey, and it's a way to learn, explore, and share the good stuff. Also share the challenges and the lessons that come in the failures. And for some of us, we learned some of these lessons early. I also come from a divorced household, and so hey, I mentioned being a lifelong athlete, so that was something I learned early on, but emotional control is something I'm learning more as an adult. My wife's been an incredible teacher in that, and I've explored some other things more recently. And yeah, so some of these things you have to tackle whenever you get to them in life, and nothing's perfect, right? I have my days where I lose it. I had one where I lost it in front of my son not too long ago, and had to address that from a heartfelt position with him. But some of I think some of what we're going to talk about today is things like daily routine and morning ritual. And that's one thing for me that is a way to get ahead of emotion and the unseen rocks in the road of each day in life, and try to go through it with some stability and calm.
Yeah, right on, man. Yeah, I think my background as a teacher, I teach high school math, and that's really helped me kind of hone the craft of teaching to some extent. And then I also do a lot of teaching and preaching for my local congregation, and a little bit of speaking and stuff like that. And it really makes me see that my passion is in teaching and helping others. And I want to use that gift to help dads. I feel it's like a lot more impactful and a lot more of a significant use of that gift and that passion than teaching kids math. And I understand I can have an impact on the kids' lives of the students that I work with, but I feel like I have the opportunity for more of a greater impact in helping dads, because dads are the leaders of their families. It's the God-given position they have, whether they accept it or not.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah, how about we hop into some of these questions? And you mentioned morning routine. So Michael, how do you establish a good morning routine? And maybe start off with, like, what's your morning routine look like? And I'll see if mine measures up to yours.
Yeah, sure. Let's compare notes. I'm sure I can take something away from what you've got. When I think about morning routine, it's probably, in addition to how, it's also what and why. And I think what is sort of what you're asking in my case. So I would say, let's just backtrack on the why and contrast. So on a day where I wake up just in time to get my son up for school, or to start working from home if I'm remote, then it feels like I have hit the ground, at 60 miles an hour. There's no me time, there's no prep time, there's nothing, and it's chaos, day long chaos, right, from start to finish. And in contrast, when I'm successful in my morning routine, it really tees me up for the day. I'm organized, I'm calm, and it just feels like, when you're in the zone, whether that's in sports or in music or something else in life, where everything's almost in slow motion and you're ahead of it. So that's kind of my why do it. In terms of what I do and I think how to be successful at it, some of the key components to what I try to do is, one is I'm going to set that alarm clock to get up and leave myself enough time. And there are days where that window compresses, but ideally what I'm going to get up and do is hydrate. That's one important thing in the morning is get back on. You've dehydrated overnight. Pound some water, start the day off right in that sense. Another is some quiet time, while you're still in sort of that calm brainwave state. For some people, it might be introspection through prayer. For other people, it might be explicit meditation. For me, it is usually quiet time through some breath work and observing the breath and stillness and just insights that will come from that. And then I'll move from there to just some quick journaling on any sort of thoughts that come out of that, insights, gratitude, and inspiration around that. And then I like to work in some movement. So even if I don't have time for a full workout in the morning, again, particularly with my back problems, one of the things I've found is beautiful for me is yoga. So I'll try to do at least a short yoga routine, if not maybe a 20, 25-minute yoga routine to get some blood flowing, get some movement in. So at that point, I've attacked sort of the physical, some of the fueling stuff in terms of hydration, and some of the mental side of things with some quiet time, some insight, and then some journaling. And I would say in terms of being successful with it, and maybe some hacks around that. Although we're talking about morning routine, I think the morning routine gets set up by the evening routine.
Yeah.
So the night before, whether that's laying the clothes out, getting the ice water, next to the bed, laying out your plan for the next day, making sure you've gone to bed on time so you can get up at 5 and do something like that. So to me, the night routine enables the morning routine to really be successful consistently.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's and it affects your whole day what you do at night. So for example, I'll pack my lunch the night before, because in the morning, it's a lot harder to pack your lunch in the morning, especially if you're trying to be quiet. And then if it's already packed, you don't have to do it, and you can focus more on your morning routine, and which in turn sets you up for the rest of the day. So I totally get you on that, man.
Yeah, it's kind of ideally it's about going out and winning the day. And hey, look, I fail at it all the time. The days that I get couch lock and I'm stuck watching something on Netflix and I stay up too late and I don't get up early and do what I need to do, man. I pay for it all day. But, that's how life is, right? You have your ups and downs and you learn from those setbacks.
Yeah, definitely. I know exactly how you feel, man.
Well, you mentioned somewhere in there, maybe becoming more in touch with our hearts and how our hearts lead things like parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you even used the term heartfelt, and one of your concepts is around heartfelt parenting. Can you explain that? What's that about as a dad?
Yeah, so lots of times traditional parenting techniques focus on behavior modification. And so what we're trying to get our kids to do is comply with what we want them to do. And the thing with the behavior modification approach is that it is effective, but unfortunately it's only effective in the short run, because you're kind of the stimulus that is prompting your child to do this, that, or the other thing. And whether that's to behave appropriately, to do their homework, to do their chores, to speak correctly. And but what happens when that external stimuli of you or your wife or the authority figure is no longer present? What motivates the child to do the right thing? And oftentimes behavior modification approach results in kids developing an entitlement mentality or becoming very selfish, because they are constantly expecting a this for that type of thing. Oh, I'm going to behave because now I'm going to get, I'm going to get more screen time, or I'm going to behave because I'm going to get another treat, or I'm going to behave just so that I can get this or that. And so it really begins to develop this entitlement mentality in a child, and in that selfishness that I was talking about. And so the reason I say it's short term is because of that. So then what happens when the parent is no longer there? What happens when the kid's 21, 22, off at college? And you hear about this all the time. The kid grew up in a home, and it looked like on the outside that the kid was a very, quote, good kid, went to church every week with his parents, said the right thing, dressed nice. Then they go to college and it's just like off the deep end. You know what I mean? That's not to say that a heart-based approach to parenting is a guarantee or a foolproof plan, but I think it's a better plan, because what you're doing is you're working with your child to train them to how to think and how to train their heart so that they have this internal sense of obligation to do the right thing, rather than always needing some sort of external force upon them to comply. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I could see where the traditional approach really creates not only entitlement, but a lot of just reliance, lack of independent thinking.
Mm-hmm.
That could go into anything, even beyond the sort of the right and wrong, and checking in with our principles, our heart, our ethos. I mean, just a quick example. I'll test it against what you just described to see if I kind of understand it. So
Sure.
So yesterday I'm taking my son to soccer practice, and he's all gung ho, and he wants to see if he can stay for an extra practice afterwards with the older kids that practice for the following hour and a half. And I said, well, this is, you got to check in with your coach, right? And he goes, well, Dad, well, can you ask him? And so we went through an evolution of, I think it's better if you ask him and you explain what you want to do and why you want to do it. And so he was going, well, what do I say? What do I ask? And I took him through it once, and he was just trying to repeat it verbatim. And I said, all right, let's back up. What do you want? Well, I want more practice. I want more hours on the field. I want more touches. I want more fitness. I just want more time to work and get better. I said, great. Have you been working hard? Yeah. Can you go for 3 hours instead of just an hour and a half? Yeah, I got this, Dad. And did you do what you needed to do before we came to practice? Yeah, I got my homework done. I said, great. So go talk to your coach and express to him what you just said, what you want to achieve and why. Ask for what it is you're asking for, and then explain, what you've done to sort of tee yourself up to be ready for it. And he went and had an adult conversation, and, coach said yes. And he went out there and rocked it for 3 hours.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I think that's a fairly good example in that particular context where you're trying to get your son to advocate for himself. You're not just helicopter dad swooping in and taking charge and fixing all his problems for him. I would say something that could be added to that is this, and you may have done this in the conversation, but one of the tools in a heart-based approach is visioning with your child. And what that means is connecting what they currently are working on, a current goal or a current struggle or a tendency you're trying to fix. In this case, he might have been trying to muster up the courage to talk to coach instead of you doing it. And so you want to try to connect that with a future state that he's working toward, and how what he's about to do, even though it's hard, uncomfortable, difficult, may not want to do it, is going to help develop him into the person that he's trying to be. So, connect that with the soccer player that he's trying to be, or how he's, how old is he now, Michael?
He's 11. So we have just one 11-year-old boy.
Okay. So like you could say, you're 11 now, you're going to be 12 soon. You're becoming older. You're becoming more mature. And one of the things that more mature, adult-like behaviors that children can begin doing is having those adult conversations. And I think you're ready for this. And, you did a very important thing there as well. And this is another tool in the parenting toolbox, is coaching and training with your kids. Lots of times a dad would just be like, no, you ask him, and kick him out of the car.
Right.
Seriously, like, man up and just do it. And maybe there's a place for that, but you took the time to kind of train and coach him. And, this is another thing that dads can really do, is there's a lot of dads that are monster coaches on the ball field, but when they come home, they're very passive, they're very aloof, they're emotionally absent, and they're not engaging with their kids. But like, they can dominate on the field as far as coaching is concerned. Well, we need to bring those coaching skills home and think of like what a coach does on the ball field, apply that in the context of parenting. And that will work you toward a heart-based approach. And not only that, I talk about this all the time, the platform for a heart-based approach is a relationship with your child. If you can develop a relationship with your child, you have a platform to work on. And this is where the coaching and the training and the teaching and the visioning and consequences, when they're called for, this is where they become even more effective, because when you have a good relationship with your child, he's going to listen to you. You know what I mean? Whereas if you don't have a relationship, lots of times the things that you say and try to work toward, even if you're doing a heart-based approach thing, it's going to fall more on deaf ears.
That's a great point as a foundation. I love the future state visualization. We've done that in some other contexts, and in this case, I didn't think to do that. That's a great one. One thing we do try to do consistently, I mean, that was one teachable moment, we might call it, but that's something I try to work with my son. His name's Michael also. Try to work with him pretty consistently on. And one of the things he and I, so you mentioned relationship, one of the things we do together and like to do together that really helps our relationship is an athletic endeavor called Spartan racing. So whether we're racing or we're training to race, we spend a lot of time together doing that. And then as a family, traveling to do those things. And my wife is the official team cheerleader and support crew. So here in the home office, the medals behind me are from sort of last year of my Spartan racing, and my son's got his equivalent one. But it's an incredible sport for us and a chance to bond for us, in the sense that it's a trail run with obstacles. And the sport itself makes a big deal about racer integrity and mindset, and those obstacles really being metaphors for life. So my son has tons of fun when he goes out there and gets up on the podium and he's won a gold medal or a silver or a bronze. Yeah. But the even better moments are the teachable moments that we can use that context for. So he had a race in Hawaii recently, and he came in so confidently that he failed his first or second obstacle, and it crushed him mentally, and he just gave up. He literally walked most of the rest of the race. He gave it away because he lost it, and he came out upset. And my wife had a chance to talk to him about what he learned from that, and what he wanted to take and apply forward, and how he wanted Sunday to look when he went back on the course. So they did some visualization. Yeah. They talked about what went wrong, what went right, what he learned from it. And he went out Saturday and destroyed the course. His time on Sunday would have beat the winner on Saturday by 4 or 5 minutes. So we have a lot of those kind of little moments where you find the nuggets in what seem like the darkest moments, but you figure out how to shine them up and apply them forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think a lot of parents are using some of the tools of a heart-based approach some of the time, but they're not aware of it. And I think raising the awareness level of parents can really help them develop more of that heart-based approach. For example, you guys kind of did that after action review with him, which is really good. Lots of times, dads would really put the pressure on and maybe even shame their kid for kind of, quote, giving up almost. But that doesn't sound like that's what you guys did. You went in there, you talked with him, you reviewed what happened, and you kind of helped him strategize. And I think a piece of the heart-based approach is giving the kid and helping them develop their own internal dialogue that helps them in those difficult circumstances. So one of the things that we do with our kids is we don't use timeout. We use what we call a break. A timeout is, your kid does something bad. A timeout is a punishment where they have to sit for X number of minutes and then they can get up, which basically you're teaching the kid how to serve a sentence, and then that makes you the warden. And I don't really want that type of relationship with my kid. A break is not a punishment. It's an opportunity for the kid to settle down, calm down, change the attitude of their heart, and come back into family life with a different mindset, and be able to review what happened and then get back into family life. So whenever we have, and you wouldn't give your kid a break for for what he did on the Spartan field there. But this just kind of segued into it. So if they're getting worked up, like emotionally charged in a situation, or the kids are fighting, you send them into a break and then come back. What we say is, my son's name is Silas. Silas, you need to take a break, change your heart, calm down, and report back to me when you're ready to talk. And so when he reports back, we have this 3 foot eye contact rule. You got to be within 3 feet and making eye contact, because, if they're further away and not making eye contact, they could be talking to me and I wouldn't hear them. I don't know if you ever run into that or not.
All the time.
Anyway, we have 3 questions we always ask. What did you do wrong? Why was it wrong? And what are you going to do differently next time? Because that really gets to the heart of the matter. What did you do wrong focuses on them. And sometimes they'll try to detract and say what their sister did, or make excuses. And that's not what we want there. We want to know what they did wrong. We want to know why it's wrong. Usually it's disobedient, disrespectful, unkind, inappropriate for the context of the situation, stuff like that. And then we say, what could you do next time? And sometimes it's situations where there's a lot of emotional intensity. Maybe the brother or sister is being annoying, or somebody's making fun of them or something like that. Or in your context, your son was having a difficult time after he was disappointed in his performance on, what would you say was the second obstacle there?
Yep.
And so we try to train them on, okay, we ask them, what can you say in your heart that will help you next time? And lots of times they don't know, especially when they're younger. And you can supply those things. If it's an annoying sibling, you could just say, it's not worth it. I need to just move on. You say that to yourself. But lots of times kids aren't trained with those adult skills, and they just get upset, fly off the handle, and then that's never taken care of. And then you have this guy road raging on the parkway, getting out of his car, breaking other people's passenger side windows and stuff like that. But it just made me think, when you were having that kind of after action review with your son, that's one way you could put that technique in there of helping him develop an internal dialogue of mental toughness in that circumstance where he had like a mini defeat. And what's he going to do in that moment?
Right.
Where's his heart going to go? Is it going to go to self-pity and, oh, me, I can't do it. I'm just going to kind of give it a halfway approach the rest of the time. Or, I got to think, even though I messed up on this one, I still have X number more to go, and I could still give it my best. And even if he's totally out of the running at that point for a medal, he can still look at that as maybe an opportunity to train for the next day or train for the next time, something like that.
Exactly. I love those 3 questions. I'm going to make note of those and use those. And the concept of a break is really good. To me, it's you're breaking a cycle.
Yes.
There's this downward spiral going on there mentally and emotionally. You're trying to interrupt that cycle.
And the earlier you can do it, the better. So another thing with the heart-based approach is you want to interrupt. I like how you use that word. You want to interrupt misbehavior as early as possible. So you don't want to wait till your kids are in a knockdown, drag out fight, or until they're so emotionally upset that they're crying and wailing all over the place. The cues of when your kids are getting irritated, when they're getting upset, when that emotional energy of anger is building up in them. You could begin to see the cues. And if you remember that the break's not a punishment, it's just an opportunity for them to calm down and change their heart, you can approach it in a totally different way. Because lots of times we let our kids get to the point where they are so upset and angry that we get angry. And then we respond with yelling, we respond with threats, we respond with intimidation, or we respond by just giving in. And then, it's just a snowball in a cycle that it just kind of embeds dysfunction in family life. And, we're all about trying to reverse that and take the dis out of dysfunction and get functional. But doing those things, having those 3 questions is really helping your child develop the adult skill of monitoring their own behavior and being able to respond appropriately in different circumstances and contexts, because these things are going to come up through life. It might not be the annoying sibling. It might be the annoying coworker. You know what I mean? So,
Right. Yeah. No, I think another way to say that or look at that might be building the skill to step back and have some impartiality in viewing your own emotions and what's going on in your heart and your head at that point in time.
right,
It's interesting you mentioned trying to interject before someone has spiraled to that point. So one of the things I was working with my son on in Hawaii in particular in that race, it was very humid, hot. It was a tough one. And I was telling him about, we were talking about mental toughness and some ways to interrupt that internal dialogue. And in particular, I said, hey, there's a use for music. There's a place for song in this process where, so in your case, it's maybe a little more intellectual of let's ponder 3 questions, and they're great ones to develop really that heart and that maturity. In this case, the context is what am I going to do in the moment of something that's physically getting tough, and then I've got this negative dialogue starting in my
right,
head. So I talked to him about having a song that he likes to sing to himself in his head, and I told him your brain can't process simultaneously pain and music, right? So when you're feeling this emotion, this negative emotion, this pain, this internal dialogue, whatever it is, pick your song and know that you've got a song to go to and start singing it to yourself. And you will find that other thing goes away. Your brain forgets about it and it focuses on music or a mantra. He's got I got this, easy day mantra that he uses sometimes as well. And so to put it in that context of sometimes, it's too late. He had a soccer game this weekend. It was very tough, very physical. They were trying to come from behind to tie it up. And he was getting talked to. This kid on the other team was talking smack, using a bunch of bad words with him.
yeah,
That really upset him. And then physically, knocked him down. He hit his head on the ground. He didn't get a call for a foul. So he got very upset at the other kid, at the referee, and he was on full tilt. And at that point, mom was yelling to him, hey, sing your song, change that mental state. But it was too late. Honestly, we didn't observe it fast enough and soon enough to help him. And he got out of control.
yeah, and that's a great opportunity to, you could even tweak those 3 questions. Like, it's not that he necessarily misbehaved, but you could go in, well, what went wrong? And why do you think that went wrong? How did, with the talking smack, why did that affect you so much? How did that get into your head? Because that's basically what he was letting that kid do, is get into his head, and then on top of that, getting knocked to the ground by the same kid. It's like a double whammy right there.
It's a double whammy. Yeah. The other thing that we've worked on trying to keep in mind, and I use it largely myself when I go out and do these things, is it's sort of like your point about having a vision of what you're trying to accomplish. What's the future state? Or more broadly, why am I doing this? What is my why? What is driving me? What's my inner motivation here? So it's not just about, hey, I want to win the medal, or I'm going to get on that podium, or I'm going to tie up the game, or I'm going to get a goal, or whatever it is you're endeavoring to do in life at that moment. It's having some deeper understanding of why you're doing it at all and why it's important to you. That really is a sustainable driver.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you to maybe explain more this concept of knowing your why. You had mentioned it before about having your why and knowing your why. I think when we were talking about the morning routine. So maybe talk a little bit more to that concept of why it's important to know your why and understand your why, and maybe even, Michael, a little bit about how you actually figure that out, because that might be, something that people struggle with too.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's where the rubber really hits the road, is figuring it out. But I think why a why and knowing it and employing it is important, and I'll kind of back into this, but to me, it's been all about fulfillment. And so when you align the things that you're doing to why you're doing them, and vice versa, you go out and you design to align to things like what you're passionate about and what you're skilled in doing, then there's just a level of happiness, fulfillment, satisfaction that naturally come out of those things. And conversely, if you're not aligned, then that's where things, life, career, other endeavors just may not be very fulfilling or feel good or feel worth your time or are sustainable when things get tough. So it also gives you a power and a fortitude to things you might be doing. So to be a little more specific and to kind of get towards how you start to discover these things, to me, I mentioned passion. What are things that you're passionate about? It's always going to keep you driving. If you've got a fire for something, then doing things that fall within your passion wheelhouse are great. And I also mentioned potential or skills. So I don't know, maybe I have a passion for music, but I have absolutely no skill in playing any musical instrument or singing, right? So if I said, well, I want to go out and, my purpose in life is to have a career as a professional musician, well, that might be quite tough for me, right? So
Yeah.
I think some honest introspection with ourselves on where the intersection is between our passion, our skills, and then also sort of our worldview and our value system or our ethos. How we want to conduct ourselves in doing those things. If you can spend some time figuring those things out, and there are different ways to go about that, then you're going to have a pretty good sense of things that will fit within bounds of maybe your why. So for me, and you and I have both been talking about being a lifelong student and teacher and sharing things in a way that can help make them the best father and husband they might be, and share with other parents how to do that as well. So for me,
Right.
as a dad, not only do I want to grow myself and do what I can to help other parents and dads, I take it right back to my son. I've got a Crucible event schedule for this year. So I went out and did a 12-hour boot camp overnight event in July, and a friend dropped me off, and I knew that my son and my wife were picking me up in the morning. So that's something that was my why. In fact, I talked to these guys about it when they came around, and these boot camp coaches were beating us down on the grinder. They want to know, what's your why? My why is my 11-year-old boy is my hero, and I want to do the tough things that make me stronger to be the best dad I can for him.
Awesome, man. I've heard of 3 good questions, I think, that help you understand your why a little bit, or maybe find that intersection of passion and proficiency. And one question is, what do you find yourself doing when time goes the fastest? Because often when we are enjoying ourselves, unfortunately, time flies by. The second thing is, what would you do even if you weren't getting paid to do it? And then the third question, and I think this really hits a nail on the head with proficiency, is, what do you get praise for from other people that is unsolicited? So like, what do other people say? Hey, that you did a really good job with that, Michael. And like, you've noticed this pattern, but you haven't asked people for feedback or like, hey, what did you think about that? It was just totally unsolicited, and they come up and say, hey, you did a good job with that. And so I've heard of those three types of questions like that to really help you begin kind of getting a bearing for your why. And I like how you said, make sure it aligns with your values and your belief system, because I think if we're operating out of alignment in those areas, it's going to be really, really, really difficult to pursue anything.
Absolutely. Or compatibility with others. I've had experiences with where I've ended up in business partnerships where eventually it became clear that we didn't have similar value systems or similar ways we wanted to approach something like business and customers. And it's not to say either is right or wrong, but they're not aligned. And so it creates a lot of friction. So I think those are 3 great questions you answer. And they point to, some people call it, find your superpower.
Mm-hmm.
I have definitely become a believer that every single one of us has something unique, a skill set let's make up an example. Maybe you're a teacher, maybe I'm a teacher. That's not what makes us unique. We have unique talents and skills and personality and knowledge and all those things that make you a different teacher than I am. And we can both be uniquely excellent at it and bring something valuable and different to the world that, could be our why. And I would also say that, tie it into morning routine or other chances for stillness and introspection, which are a great time to sort of think without thinking. Let your subconscious brain surface a little more of this stuff for you as you explore. And you can also tie it into the journey. What may be your why today could be different in 20 years. So it's an evolution. Life is always dynamic.
Oh yeah, definitely. I know one of the big pieces of my why, and when we talk about this in Dad Hackers, is this view of having a multi-generational legacy of faithfulness. And what I mean about that is that, and anybody can apply this, is that what you do with your children doesn't affect just them. It affects generations to come. And I think when you look at parenting and your relationship with your children from that standpoint, and realizing that you're going to have a multi-generational impact no matter what, you can kind of reverse engineer things so that impact is more positive than negative. Because I'll tell you what, a lot of dads don't think, as far as their parenting, don't think beyond today. And like, what do I need to do just to get through today? How can I get the kid out of my hair today? How can I get the kid to comply today, or to just do what I want, or to just, not be annoying, and then some parents might have the desire to raise a child that is successful in one way or another, or is a quote good kid, or graduates high school, goes to college, gets a good job, and those types of things. And that's a little bit better in the right direction. But we really want to raise the next generation with an eye toward raising the generations that follow. So not just having a direct impact on our children, but knowing that that's going to impact our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, and generations far off. And so, when I think about my why, that's a big piece of the why, knowing that what I do today doesn't just affect today, tomorrow, or next year, and doesn't just affect my children, but it affects multiple generations to come. And I think, what kind of impact do I want to have with those generations?
Wow, that's powerful. I'm glad you brought that up. I know it's something that you touch on quite frequently. I'm glad you expounded on it. I mean, we really do have the opportunity to perpetuate to numerous generations, and those cycles could be positive or they can be negative. So having a conscious focus on what we carry forward through our children to generations to come is fantastic. Do you tie that in as well to consistency in how you engage with your children, and how that sets up the pattern that hopefully becomes multi-generational?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think I have a funny kind of backstory. My wife and I will often jokingly say consistency is the key to results. I bet you it was 20 years ago, my cousin and I would work out, and we would do these abs of steel videos. Did you ever see those steel videos? They like chest of steel, abs of steel, buns of steel.
Sure.
And then VHS. So we're talking, several years ago. And at the end of the one ab video, the guy would always say, he said, consistency is the key to results. See you tomorrow. And like, it was super cheesy, but man, is it true. Man, is it true. And I think that's a big piece that dads can really, and men in general can really step up in, is being consistent in general with whatever they do, and also being faithful and men of their word. But particularly with my kids, I think having some systems, routines, or rhythms set up in your life. And again, you'd have to contextualize this because not everybody has the same schedule that I do. But having those systems and routines and rhythms of life enables you to set yourself up for successfully engaging with your kids on a consistent basis. So I mentioned earlier, I have 5 kids, and my wife and I each do this. We have mommy time or daddy time, and we do one kid each day of the week. So Monday, I have Naomi, and we'll have daddy time. And it's just one-on-one time, 20 minutes. Doesn't have to be like super planned out. Doesn't have to be expensive. Oftentimes we don't even leave the house, or we might go for a walk or hike in the woods or something. But it's just one-on-one time with them. And I'll tell you what, when you tell them about that and they know it's coming, they will hold you accountable to it. And, you know, it doesn't work out to do it 100% consistently because, you know, sometimes, you know, you have a day Monday where you're just gone all day, or it's a holiday or something like that. But the pattern is to consistently have my daddy time with her on Monday. Tuesday, I have Abram. Wednesday, I have Sarai. Thursday is Silas, and Friday is Lydia. Sometimes I got to do a makeup day on Saturday or Sunday. But, you know, it's real simple. We have a snack together, or we go for a walk, or my son's really been getting into eBay, and he wants to try to start selling some stuff on eBay. So we might like look up stuff or research that a little bit. You know, and that helps, having that system set up. Another thing we do is we do a thing called popcorn pajama party. And every Friday night, when we're home on a Friday, and if not Friday, Saturday, occasionally we'll have to stretch it to Sunday when it's a crazy weekend. But we just pop a bowl of popcorn after dinner, put on some PJs, watch a movie. And each week, a different kid gets to pick what the movie is. So, you know, it takes a while, but we cycle through all the kids and then just kind of repeat. And they look forward to that. They really do. And those are just a couple of the things that we do in our house. We've done dates before, like monthly dates with the kids. That's kind of fallen away for now. We probably should get back into that piece. But I think just whatever your context is and whatever you can do, set up some systems and routines or rhythms with your kids. And you know, you can apply the same thing to your relationship with your wife, and stick to it. Let them know about it. Let them hold you accountable to it as well. Because I tell you what, they will. When they know the routine, when they know the rhythm, and they know it's their turn, they will hold you accountable to it.
They will, for sure. No, I'm a big believer in consistency. In fact, to me, that's fundamental to everything. It's really
right.
Nobody is going to make a major sea change overnight that is done through something sustainable in the short term. It's all about long-term consistency. It's the compounding results of small, consistent actions that build upon each other. That's just how life is. Whatever physics set up that equation, that's the way it works. And consistency enabled through discipline of a routine or a rhythm or cadence is a great way to help maintain it. I think some of the stuff you're doing as a family is incredible. Five children, playing a 2-on-5 zone defense is pretty awesome. How old are all the kids?
My oldest is 12, will be 13 next month. And then Lydia is 11. Naomi's going to be 10 on Thursday. Abram is 7. He was actually born on leap day. So he'll be 8 this year, or 2, 2020. Or 8, however you want to look at it. And then Sarai, our youngest, she's 4. And she is a spitfire. I will tell you what, man. She's crazy. But I love her. I love them all, obviously.
Sounds like a blast. My wife is the youngest of 6, so I might have a little bit of an idea of how the youngest of that many works. But man, it sounds like a blast, and the mission you're on with your podcast and your other forums, the community you've got for men and dads. I'm gonna have to get in there myself. I really like what you got going on, and this is a really good discussion. I got a bunch of notes I took away here that I'm gonna go try as soon as my son gets home today.
Yeah, likewise, Mike. And I appreciate the conversation. I learned a lot. I got my own notes here going, and I think the Spartan racing that you're doing with your son, and kind of that those little pep talks that you're doing before practice and things, I think you're doing a lot of things right. And it sounds like you have an awesome relationship with your son. And I appreciate the conversation. Michael, if guys listen to my podcast want to reach out to you or get connected with what you're doing, what's the best way or two that they could get connected?
Yeah, sure. And thanks. I mean, doing the best job I can as a dad, learning every day, and always trying
Oh
to
yeah,
trying to improve around all the themes we're talking about here.
yeah.
So yeah, if people want to reach out and learn more, check out the guests I've got talking about these same kind of things around showing up and performing in life. The Man of Mastery podcast is on all the major podcast outlets. There's a website that's also manofmastery.com. And I'm on Facebook, probably a bit more active on Instagram, which is at the Man of Mastery. So I'd love to hear from people, whether there's comments out there, shoot me a note through the email on the website, or check out the podcast and let me know what you think. And likewise, what's the best way for my tribe to reach out and learn more about what you've got going on?
Yeah, the primary way is dadhackers.us. And that's our website. You can find the podcast there. You could find links for connecting with our online free Facebook group for Dad Hackers, as well as social media. And, we're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, those types of things. All those are at Dad Hacker 1. But the podcast is on all major podcast suppliers out there. And so man.
Are we, I don't know if we're up against a hard stop here, or if you got just another minute to also expound on, it looks like you've got an Iron Men. Is that a subscription-based group as well that's in addition to what you've talked about?
Yeah, man, I got a minute. Yeah, so that is our monthly membership, and that is called the Iron Man Mastermind. And so the guys in there, we meet once a week virtually, just kind of like you and I are meeting on Zoom now. We actually have our meeting tonight later on, so we'll be doing that. And we meet weekly. We share our wins. Each guy gets a shot in the middle. We call it the man in the spotlight. And he brings forth before us something he's struggling with, something he's got on his mind, a problem he's trying to work through. And it's really neat because you can get a lot of different vantage points and perspectives on a problem that you're dealing with that you might never have even thought of. I mean, there's been many times where a guy will bring forth a problem and somebody else will say something that they thought was like very simple and kind of self-evident. And it was like the thing that clicked for that guy. And he was like, I never thought of that. And it, when you're in the thick of it, I always think of a forest of trees. When you're in the thick of it, you're like staring at the bark of a tree, and that's all you could see is the bark on the tree and maybe that ant or the sap running down the bark of the tree. But then when you bring, 5, 6, 7 other guys in to give their perspective, they're looking at the 30,000 foot view. They're seeing a lot more of the forest, or they're removed, they're not staring right at the bark. They're not right in the thick of it. They're not right in that trench where you are, and they can offer a totally different perspective. And the guys really, really, really resonate with that type of thing. So
nice. That sounds incredible. It sounds like a great way to sort of crowdsource some insight and different perspectives, different angles on a problem. Definitely. And it sounds like the spotlight process is also giving guys a chance maybe to open up with a little vulnerability and a trusting group and really kind of work some things out.
Yeah, I'll tell you, a lot of the guys mentioned how they've connected more with the guys in that group than a lot of their close friends personally. And I think that's one of the ways that we can leverage social media and we can leverage technology, is because lots of times in close-knit groups that are physically close to each other, everybody knows each other. So if I'm being open, honest with you, your wife might know my wife, and I might be a little bit, more hesitant to reveal some things to you that I'm really struggling with because I'm afraid, like word's going to get out or something like that. But when you're talking with guys that are, in different states or in different countries, that wall of separation kind of comes down a little bit more, and it's pretty neat what can happen.
That sounds neat. Well, I'm going to check that out as well. So let's connect on social media, and I'll come check out the website and the Iron Men. Looking forward to it, and I really appreciate the talk. It was a good one. Yeah,
Mike, I appreciate it as well, and I encourage everybody to check out manofmastery.com and look at the podcast and see the good things you got going on there, man.
Fantastic. Thanks, Patrick. Appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Thank you very much, man. Take care.
You too.
That was a really fun collaboration with Patrick and his Dad Hackers podcast. Really glad he had me on. Grateful that he took the time to do that. And it was a great conversation and some great insight and some new ideas for me. Hope they helped you as well. And that's it for this week. I just want to share a preview of a couple things coming up here in the near future. I've got some guests I'm recording with and really excited to have on the show. One is an incredible author, really dynamic speaker, self-proclaimed warrior monk who has a new book coming out we'll talk about, and that one should drop in a week or two. And then another, I just came back from a 3-day weekend training that involves best practices in human development. This is integrated improvement, self-development across a dynamic range of disciplines, and went through that with some teammates. I'm going to have 2 teammates from that event join me on a solo cast, if you can call that, with a trio, and as teammates talk about our lessons learned and some really powerful experiences, breakthroughs, and insights that we had from that training event. All right, that's it for this week. Thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate your time. Have a great week. Reach out on Instagram at The Man of Mastery. Any suggestions, comments, future guests, episodes, topics you'd like to hit, love to hear about them. And as always, appreciate your time and your feedback. Thank you guys, and see you next week.